there for me. It's a big group. I will keep my remarks here to a maximum of 10 minutes. The bottom line is, before I tell you why I'm real close to announcing my candidacy for governor, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the mayor of Newington. I was re-elected this past November. I'm the oldest of 5 children. I was born and raised in Newington. Actually, I was born in Hartford, but raised in Newington. Went to school through Newington. I went to Mayor's College. I got a degree in economics. While I was in Mayor's College, I also joined the United States Marine Corps Reserves. I enlisted. And I still did that in combination with my schooling at Mayor's College. I was a grunt, a machine gunner. So I've kind of been out there and getting dirty a little bit, not just in the Marine Corps, but also in business and also being the mayor of Newington. And Mike also made reference to the fact that Mr. DeBella at the MDC, and I was a commissioner at the MDC until very recently, and I've always kind of, along with one of your folks here in Windsor, Kevin Deneen, we fought and tried to change that for many years. But you know what? It's an example of how government is out of control in the state of Connecticut and not responsive to the people. But I digress. So I got my degree from Mayor's College. I'm a certified financial planner. I have my own independent practice in the town of Newington, a financial planning practice. Married my wife, Marina, and we have 3 small children. And I'm going to come back to my 3 small children in a few minutes. But a few years ago, almost 3 years ago to this point, I decided to run for mayor of the town of Newington. And I'm telling you this because I think there's a lot of parallels between that situation, Newington, perhaps Massachusetts, and what we saw a couple days ago in the state of Connecticut. Let me tell you a little bit about Newington at the time. Back in 2007, when I ran for mayor, the Democrats had controlled the town of Newington for 14 straight years. Let me say that again. For 14 straight years, the Democrats had controlled the town of Newington and the government in our town. The registration in Newington is very similar to Massachusetts. There's nearly half the people are registered independents, not quite. And then if you look at the actual registered parties, the folks that are not the unaffiliated voters, it's almost a 3 Democrat to 1 Republican split. And I tell you that because what we did in Newington, as soon as I decided I was going to run for mayor, and the current mayor at the time said he wasn't running, I said, you know what, I'm going to run for mayor. I sat down with a few close friends of mine, and we basically came up with something called the 3-point pledge for the town of Newington. We're going to cap taxes. We were going to create a process through charter revision, so there's budget referendums. And number 3, we were going to do a complete unbiased study of school security in the town of Newington because we had some issues. All right? I made every person that ran on my team sign that pledge. They signed that pledge. We ran as a unified team. Let me tell you, by the way, in the town of Newington, the Republicans had never won every possible seat. Guess what? We worked as a team. We said the same message together. And you know what? We swept everything in 2007. It was the first time in the town of Newington that we won every seat of the town council, the Board of Education, the fire commissioners, everything. And I was so proud of that moment. But I was more proud of the fact that we moved forward and we did every single thing we said we'd do for the people. Our promises made were promises kept. And that brings me to why I'm considering, and I'm almost ready to decide, to run for governor. It's very simple. Because of my 3 young children. My son Luke is 9 years old, my son John is 6 years old, and my daughter Grace, she's almost 2. And here's why I tell you I'm running for my kids. Because you know what? I want my kids, when they grow up, to live in the town of Newington, and as a matter of fact, the state of Connecticut. And here's what I mean by that. Since 1991, if you look around, there's been a mass exodus from the state of Connecticut. We've lost in the neighborhood of 325,000 people, or about 10% of our population. And by the way, if you look at the people that are leaving, and compared against the folks that are coming in, we're losing the people with the higher incomes and higher education, and we're getting replaced with people with much lower incomes and education levels. On top of that, we're losing businesses by the swarms. Okay? So, and let me tell you, this is also something that's very personal to me. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. 2 of my brothers and my sister have already permanently moved out of the state of Connecticut. So there's only 40% of a family of 5, and every one of us should have a college degree. One of my brothers is living in Chicago. He's got a PhD in material science. It's the kind of person we need living in the state of Connecticut. So this is our problem. So what am I going to do about it? How are we going to secure Connecticut's future and return the prosperity to this state? Here's my plan. I call it the Common Sense Commitment to Connecticut, or the 3 C's. it's kind of funny, I got to say this, to digress for a moment, but you look at the mayor over here, we all got our little three things in format. Bottom line, common sense commitment to Connecticut is very simple. Number one, we're going to cap taxes. Number two, we're going to cut government spending. And number three, it's about Connecticut's comeback and making Connecticut open for business. So let me take a moment and talk about each one of those things. Number one, capping taxes. There will be no new taxes if I were elected. Number two, there will be no tax increases. As a matter of fact, if you look at there's over 300 taxes and fees in the state of Connecticut. If you look at the bottom 200, they only generate about $32 million of an $8 billion budget. We'll get rid of those bottom 200 taxes and fees. We'll eliminate them. It's just aggravation, red tape, and it probably costs us more money to collect those taxes in compliance than it does even to have those taxes and fees. So that's number one, capping taxes. Number two, we're going to cut government spending. If we go back to 1991 and look at the government spending, the state of Connecticut government spending, adjusted for inflation and population. I wish I could say population growth, but population. You've seen real spending from our state government increase by 25%. Let's step back and think about that for a second. 25% of an $18 billion budget. Anyone want to take a guess what that means? It's about $4 billion. If our politicians in the city of Hartford had said, you know what, we're going to be fiscally disciplined along the way. We're not just going to go create more programs. We're going to increase layers of bureaucracy. You know what? We wouldn't have this problem today, but we do. It's going to be a painful process. We're going to have to cut this government spending back, but you know what? Everybody should participate in that process. The politicians have maxed out our credit cards. The party's over. And it's going to be a painful process of bringing things back into line and doing that spending cuts. But that's the only way we're going to make things happen in the long term in the state of Connecticut. Which leads me to the third point I have, and that's Connecticut's comeback. Connecticut's comeback, and what I mean by that is very simply, we have to send a message. As the governor, I'd have to send a message as the leader. And all the activities that the state legislature does, we'd have to send that same message. That message that Connecticut is open for business. It's very simple. We can't say that we're pro-jobs or that somehow we're going to create new programs to create jobs. Government does not create jobs. Businesses create jobs. How many times have we heard, and somebody else mentioned this before, but how many times have we heard politicians get up in front of you and say, you know what, we're going to plan to create more jobs. You know what, and then they turn around and everything they do from a practical standpoint is anti-business. You can't be pro-jobs and anti-business. If we get businesses to start coming back to this state, and how are we going to do that? We're going to have to cut corporate tax rates. We're going to have to look at getting rid of the entity tax and a number of other things. It's the overall message from the top that says, you know what, we want your business. If you're in the state of Connecticut, you have a business, we want you to expand your business in the state of Connecticut. We don't want you to move your jobs down to Georgia or to Singapore. We want you, if you're looking to expand your business, we want you to expand it in the state of Connecticut. Because you know what? If we get out of the way, we get the government out of the way, we lower the overall tax burden for everybody, it's going to make it so people want to stay in the state, can afford to stay in the state, and businesses are going to want to come here more. And if we do that and we get those jobs to come along with the businesses, guess what? It's going to solve just about every problem that the state wants to talk about. From educating their children, to poverty issues, to the state budget. How about that? Because we get more people to start coming back and more jobs, there'll be more revenue that goes with it. This is how we do it. We've got to be pro-business. So, in summary, because I don't want to go too long here, I'm going to ask for your support for governor if I decide to do this. I'm going to decide in the next week or two. And if you give me your support, you know what you're going to get. Number one, you're going to get a plan. The common sense commitment to Connecticut, all right, which includes capping taxes, cutting government spending, and Connecticut's comeback. And I'm not just going to come out with that for myself. If I'm the candidate for the Republican Party for governor, I'm going to ask every Republican candidate to sign on to that message also. And I'm also going to reach across the aisle and say, you know what, any of you Democrats that are out there, if you want to sign on to this, sign on and I'll support you also. But the bottom line is we've got to run as a unified body with a unified message. That's what we did in Newington. It worked. It will work for the state of Connecticut also. You know, and we hear so much also, I've got to say this.